Hello YouTube, welcome to the Educated Barbarian part 19 if I'm not mistaken. We're picking where we left off last time, and I actually have selected the paragraph for you that if you watch the video I made about individualism will resonate strongly. In an organic unity, bodily members play the same part as reasoning beings among separate existences, since both are fitted for one joint operation. This thought will come home to you the more vividly if you say often to yourself, I am a member of the mighty organism, which is made up of reasoning beings. If instead of a member, you say that you are merely a part, you have not yet attained a heartfelt love of mankind. As yet you love not worth doing for its own sake alone, and you still perform your bare duty, with no thought that you are your own benefactor by the deed. It's amazing how a paragraph could sum up an entire video I made, because in reality this is everything. This details the step of individualism leading to a pure collectivism that benefits the identity of the person who actually joined the collective, which in return fits the individuality of the person, which in return fits the collective, because what is good for the bee is good for the swarm. And therefore, collectivism and individualism is really just a different name for the same concept. And the way we use it nowadays, the semantics and the meaning we apply to these words, is just the perverted version of it. It's what happens when you mess up. It's what happens when you don't actually follow what Marcus Aurelius says, and you fail to consider yourself as a member. You just consider yourself as part. And it's different. Those are different things, because the difference between a body part and a member, think about it. What does it mean when you talk about these terms? A body part is cold. It's a detached notion. It's very scientific in verbiage. A member is affectionate. It communicates a sense of attachment. It's a member, right? It's one of your members, right? A member of the community is someone that you like. It's someone that belongs there, that would be missed dearly if they left. But if they're just a part, or they're just taking part, what does it mean? It conveys different things. Be careful with the way you describe your life to your own self, because it's going to dictate the way you live it. And therefore, you need to see yourself as part of that collective that you better as an individual, because in return it betters you, and vice versa. And that also is through the love of mankind. That is extremely important, because if you don't love mankind, why are you even trying to better yourself? Because at the end of the day, bettering yourself is for the good of the collective. So you're going to fall into the pitfall of individualism, which in reality means that you're just going to accumulate resources for yourself and not for the group. That is something to think about, that a lot of people don't understand. From the word without let, what will affect whatever parts are subject to such affection? Let the part which suffers complain, if it will, of the suffering. But I, if I admit not that the hap is evil, remain uninjured. Not to admit is surely my power. So that's the notion of pain being sent to your brain by a member, again, that is trying to warn you that something is happening to it, and you having the choice to decide whether or not you're going to receive that information and what you do with it. Of course, you cannot cut down pain and the pain signals, but you can choose to ignore them if you think it is the right choice. And it starts by admitting that you can. It's the reason why I cited this paragraph, is because I realize that a lot of people fail to do that because they refuse to admit their own power for multiple reasons. One, because if you admit that you have power, then you have agency, then you have free will, and therefore any wrongdoings or any mishap is on you. You cannot blame someone else because you have full control over yourself. Therefore, a lot of people pretend that they are completely helpless. And I know it can be tempting, and I know also that there is a certain amount and degree of seduction and temptation when you see someone else do that. It's the reason why groups of whiny people tend to attract other people that are not necessarily whiny at first, but that will become whiny because it's the culture of the group, and it's a comfortable culture because it's a blame culture. And I truly do believe that this is the worst thing you can do in your life. You have to admit that you have your own power, you have to celebrate your own power and make use of it. Let anyone say or do what he pleases. I must be a good man. it is just as gold or emerald or purple might say continually, let men do or say what they please. I must be an emerald and retain my luster. So here, again, touching on the notion that the action of others has no influence on yourself, and the fact that a lot of people try desperately to please and appeal to people that deep down they don't like. That goes even further than that. Just like always with Marcus Aurelius, there's always another step. You can always learn more. And here what he's telling you is basically the state of your being, your identity and your principles cannot be affected by others. Not necessarily that they cannot change them by force, but more than that, they cannot be allowed to modify the way you behave because it might be convenient at the moment. Let's say you have a certain principle, you see a certain person do something that breaks that principle, and you see that you objectively, on a purely utilitarian standpoint, would benefit from doing the same. Do you break your principle? Of course, you don't. And it's the same for if you are attacked directly on a certain question or object or something, and going out of your way to attack aggressively the person would also go against your principle. And if you're trying to apply stoicism to your life, it should. Well, then you just don't do it. And the way to not do that and to refrain yourself from changing your identity in reaction is to tell you that you must be yourself. And being yourself means not changing for others, for the good or for the bad. You change for yourself. I'm not saying just be stuck in your way, but understand that if you are going to evolve as a man or a woman, it needs to be for your own sake, because that's what's going to benefit the community as a whole in the long run. And on top of that, he also say that you must let them do or say as they please. Does it mean that you are never going to intervene? No, it's not what he's saying here. What he's saying is that if we're talking about ideologies and philosophically, the ability of men to do their bindings, even if evil, cannot be stopped. It cannot be blockaded because it would be a direct contradiction to the ideals of Stoicism. Let men do what they will, act as a response if needed, but never try to prevent the action from happening. A lot of systems, and that's across the board, is the sign of a system that is diseased, tries to prevent the crime from happening at the source by circumventing the means of doing the crime. And you can really go really far with this. You can try and manipulate children to make sure that they never grow up to become criminals. You can reduce the access to weapons, thinking that if someone who's a criminal cannot find a weapon, then they stop being a criminal. All of that, Marcus Aurelius tells you, is stupid. You are trying to stop the source from emitting things. It's not possible. The source will throw things. Then you react to them. You cannot prevent it. The soul which rules you vexes not itself. It does not, for example, awake its own fears or arouse its own desires. If another can raise grief or terror in it, let him do so. By its own impressions, it will not be led into such emotions. Let the body take thought, if it can, for itself, lest it suffer anything, and complain when it suffers. The soul, by means of which we experience fear and sorrow, and by means of which indeed we receive any impression of these, will admit no suffering. You cannot force it to any such opinion. So it's really the first paragraph that I like in this one, because it's the idea that when you are upset, you really upset yourself. And that is a concept that a lot of people don't grasp, because it correlates also to a certain idea of gaslighting, where someone does a thing to you and they tell you, oh, I'm sorry you felt this way, because they're trying to make you believe that you did that to yourself. And on a philosophical level, they're right. It's just that objectively and factually, they're not, because what they're doing is pretty much pushing the blame onto you for the feelings that they invoked in you. But it is true, and Marcus also tells you that you did that to yourself. Like, if I tell you that you're stupid, okay? I look at you in the eye, I tell you you're stupid. Are you stupid? Does that make you stupid? I don't have the power to turn you into someone unintelligent with my words. The only power I have is to try to convince you that you are. And if I can convince you that you are, I'm going to hurt you. But if you are, by yourself, fully convinced that you are not stupid, then the insult does nothing to you. Only the truth hurts. And that again is 50-50, because it's also a saying that is used by a lot of people who are brutally honest, which in reality means that they open their mouth when asked, but it also has some truth. If you are not fully confident in yourself, these types of attack can touch you. If you are fully confident, they cannot. They will bounce off. And even bounce off is giving them too much credit. If you are confident, they will just go right through you, like you're a ghost, because it won't register. It's like if I, on the street randomly, I told you, hey, you dropped your pink dog. Would you react? Would anything happen in your brain besides surprise? Would you be like, I don't have a pink dog? Well, that's the same thing. You don't have stupidity. So why do you react negatively when someone tells you you do? It's strange. And yet, Marcus Aurelius explains to you that it's natural in the sense, but can be prevented. Do you dread change? What can come without it? What can be pleasanter or more proper to universal nature? Can you eat your bath unless wood undergoes a change? Can you be fed unless a change is wrought upon your food? Can any useful thing be done without changes? Do you not see then that this change also which is working in you in events such as these, and alike necessary to the nature of the universe? Again, it's the idea of a positive that is used in everyday life that becomes a negative when it affects us directly. And that's true with change. We are actors of change. That's the reason why humans are the dominant species on Earth. We are a capacity to affect change on a level that animals cannot. And I'm going to take a stupid example, but for example, opening a door. It might sound stupid, but the opening of a door is an action that almost no animals can do, meaning that they have a very low ability to evolve through space. And you might tell me, well, there's no doors in nature. True, but there are certain things to pick up and carry. There are certain things that you cannot reach. You have to build something. How do you do that? You do that through change. And therefore, we also, again, as humans, are the main victims of change, because we willed it so much that it's natural that our environment would be full of it. And it's outside of just nature. Nature throws change at you all the time, but humans also do. And the amount of change that you go through in a day is like 50 times more than a cat, because the cat doesn't have the ability to change much in his life, and therefore is not really affected by change the same way we are. But it also means that a cat would have a much lower ability to handle change, whereas we do. But the problem is that a lot of people don't make use of it, because they see change as negative when it affects them negatively, and they see it as neutral or don't even think about it when they're cooking their food, for example. You have to look at both of these objectively as something neutral happening to you that you're then going to try and solve. That's it. That is change. And people who resent change have a tough time in life, because you cannot stop change. And I think I talked about it in the past, and I just talked about it like 5 minutes ago, but systems that seek to control the happening of change are one of two things. One, they are hypocritical and malicious because they try and pretend that they are going to try and stop change from happening, but in reality they are going to become in full control of change, and they are going to be able to use it for their own benefit and certainly not for yours. So that's when the system takes full control. Or two, it's naive, and it truly does have a heart that believes that it can control change for the good of people, and so it plays the sorcerer apprentice, and it messes things up. I've seen that in the past. Systems, especially political systems, who try to create that, who try to grab something that they see as a problem that is really just natural change, and make it their thing, their own creation, and it always backfires. And usually it backfires on the people who are not affected by the change in the first place, but now the change affects more people. Accept change wholeheartedly and then just react to it. It is man's special business to love even those who err. And to this love you attain if it is borne in upon you that even these sinners are your kin, and that they offend through ignorance and against their will. Remember before all things that they have not harmed you, for they have not made your soul worse than it was before. So, I think the first part relates a lot to YouTube fitness in general. Because in YouTube fitness, there's a lot of negativity. And I would say that in all of the departments, all of the categories on YouTube, YouTube fitness is the worst of the worst, where there is the most distress, the most bitterness, the most mental issues, and therefore there's the most negativity. And that means that as a creator, I'm also I'm a witness of this, and I'm also sometimes a target for this. And that is perfectly fine because I understand where it's coming from. Just like what I explained to you when someone insults you, since they can't make you the thing, like they call you stupid, they can't make you stupid. So what is the goal? Like if you go back to the root of the problem, what is the goal? Well, the goal is for them to make you feel bad about yourself because they feel bad about themselves. People who feel tremendous about themselves don't have to put other people down. If anything, you try to elevate other people so that they can have fun with you, which is pure individualism. But for a lot of people, they don't have that, so they try to actually put you down. But Marcus Aurelius tells you that you have to love these people. You have to love them for one simple reason. One, they're your brothers and sisters, they're your kin. And that in reality, all of that comes from ignorance. Not just ignorance of mathematics or whatever, but ignorance of the self. They don't know themselves. The people I've met in my life were the most lost, the most mean, were people who didn't know themselves at all, or if they knew themselves, they hated who they were. And that creates lost souls. There's no better term to describe that, they're lost. Because if you lose the self, then you have nothing. I mean, it's cliche to say that, but enlightenment starts with who you are and falling in love with who you are. And once that happens, not only are you more complete as a person, but on top of that, you are now your own best friend. And it means you're never alone and you're never lost. You always know where you stand because you know where you stand. And where you stand is the self, regardless of the spatial arrangement around you. Those people don't have that. There is a level of pity to be felt. And if help can be extended, try. Marcus Aurelius doesn't tell you to help them, he tells you to love them. I tell you to maybe try and help, but don't let it become something that is going to drag you down. I've, again, known many people who are kind-hearted, good individuals, who extended and reached out so much that they eventually lost touch with the self. And when that happens, they also lost the ability to extend. And also, by extending all the time, they were attacked again and again, and eventually it turned them into a bad person. So be careful, preserve who you are at all costs. That is the number one priority in your life. And I like the fact that it's against their will, because in reality, it's a type of possession. And if you catch these people in vulnerable moments, they will tell you. They'll tell you that they hate themselves, that they just want it to end. They're trying to find a way out, but they just can't. They need attention, but they can't get any attention. So even negative attention is a good thing. It's something that I will detail in a video that is coming out tomorrow, actually. But that's that. Try and find some love for these people because their life is not easy. A wrathful look is completely against nature. When the countenance is often thus deformed, its beauty dies. Okay, see, that's interesting. I picked this one because there are many things in this text that I don't agree with. And Marcus Aurelius would actually tell you that this is healthy. This agreement is healthy. A wrathful look. What is a wrathful look? It's when you're angry. And most likely you're angry at someone because you don't, unless you're very strange, when you bump your foot against the door, you don't look at the door with a wrathful look. You might be angry, and you might even be angry at the door, but you're not going to look at the door. What does that mean? It means that when you're angry at someone, you look at them, and in a way, it's a warning sign. It's a way to let them know, hey, I'm conveying through my facial expressions that I'm going to become violent. This is the first step towards violence. And I have found that the most violent people were not kind enough to give that type of warning sign. So the ones that liked domination did, meaning that for them, making you submit with an expression of the face was impressive for their own ego. But just like what my uncle would say all the time, the most dangerous dog is the dog that doesn't bite. And it's something that I verified too, where every time I got bitten in my life, it was by the one dog that didn't bite. It just walked up to me and bit me. Usually they don't even run, because even running is a sign of aggression. And most of the time when a dog barks when they run, when they posture, it's a way for them to get out of it. They don't want to bite you. They just want you to leave, right? They just want you out. They'll bite if they don't have a choice. The dog that bites you immediately wanted to bite you, and that's it. All of that to say what? All of that to say that here, that's what he's saying, I think. He's saying that because it means that you got upset, you got yourself upset because someone did something to you or said a remark, and now you feel the need to make them know that you're upset. I think that's the reason why he's so against that. And it's the reason why he talks about beauty, because the beauty of the source, the beauty of the creation that you are, is deformed in facial aesthetics and in nature by the grimace of wrath. My idea of this is, if we do that, if we look at people angrily, it's for a reason, right? It's part of the social coding and it's part of biology and reality. It's a way to prevent damage from happening. It's a way to give an out. Because just like if we go back to my example, if we just all walked up to people we don't like and we clocked them in the face, society would just collapse. We cannot all be dogs that don't bark. We need to bark. Most people bark and that's all they do. And it's annoying, but for what we have, for the base we have as a group of humans right now, it's the best thing we can have. I understand that Marcus Aurelius is trying to tell you to expand and elevate yourself all the way. So for him, not only would you not be angry at first, you wouldn't show signs of anger and you wouldn't apply the passion to fight, but we're not at that collective level yet. And therefore, I think that yes, having wrathful looks once in a while is okay. Whenever someone offends you, consider straight away how he has erred in his conception of good and evil. When you see where his error lies, you will pity him, and be neither surprised nor angry. Indeed, you yourself perhaps still wrongly count good the same thing as he does, or things just like them. Your duty then is to forgive. Okay. So we expand on this idea on this classical concept of extending comprehension and compassion to people. How do we do that? We intellectualize things. When someone insults you, instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to fire back, or oh, it made me feel X, try to stay away from emotions. Try to think logically. Think, why did that person say that? What does it mean? And 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10 in reality, if you know the person a tiny bit or if you're a bit observant, you will find the answer. And I want you to know that once you find the answer, it doesn't mean that you're going to fire back, right? It's one of, I think it's a sad deviation of arguments that I see nowadays where observant people that should have empathy have turned that into a weapon and they weaponize empathy to hurt, meaning that they can pinpoint something that you are within you and are going to use it to make you feel bad. I do that sometimes, I'm not going to pretend that I don't, but I only do it when I'm dealing with someone who I think is a lost case and they need to be jerked awake. It happens sometimes. Some people you really need to, because in most cases they have lost touch with the self, as I said, and by you taking out that darkness and showing it to them and being like, hey, this is who you are, it wakes them up. But it also means that it has limited use and it should never be used to put people down if it's just because they hurt your feeling in an instant. So it's something to keep in mind. I also like the fact that he says, you yourself perhaps still wrongly count good the same thing as he does. So it's the idea also that even in your bunker, right, you receive the attack. Marcus Aurelius tells you not to think of yourself as superior. That's a danger. That's the danger of Stoicism. It's the danger of the man who receives an attack and thinks, oh, it doesn't touch me because you are a lowly fool and I am a supreme Stoic. No. That's faulty. You erred. Just now you erred. You thought yourself superior. Think to yourself, my fellow brother has taken a shot at me. Okay? The shot didn't land, but it doesn't make him lesser. It makes him someone who's erring right now. I'm thankfully not in that moment doing that, but I very well could. And just because in that moment I am quote unquote superior doesn't mean that in the long run or in absolute terms I am. because that notion would characterize you as good and him as evil, but that makes no sense. You come from the same source. He's just in that moment evil, and you're in that moment good. The Stoic is someone who tries to constantly remain good and impact good around him by ignoring or affecting evil positively. And we're going to stop with, actually, maybe this one. No, we're going to stop with this one. Retire within yourself. The reasoning power that rules you naturally finds contentment with itself in just dealing, and in the calm which such dealing brings. This is practical advice. I would like you to do that if you can, and you actually can, so yes, you will do it. Find moments in your day when you're not looking at a phone, when you're not reading a book, when you're not watching TV. Just be, right? Let your gaze wander and just be. You will find eventually that you won't be able to see what's around you because you'll be fully within the self. Some people call it meditation. I just call it thinking. And just see where it takes you. You will find that your brain and your self rejoices fully in that instant. And if it doesn't, it is the sign that you're most likely someone who's very anxious, because it is a natural state of any person. If you cannot do that and you start fidgeting, you have a problem to fix. There are some things in you that don't like you being in that state. They try to shake you a little bit more so that you're out of it and you start being active and energetic and vibrant again, but not in the right way. Because those moments of just pause, where the world stops, these are the moments where you're truly with yourself. And these are quintessential. I know that for me, if I don't have them, it eats away at me. So it's something that I really encourage you to do, because it's how I discovered who I was and who I am. And I was lucky that I started doing that very young, and I know many people don't nowadays because of all of the distractions of the modern world. But it's something that is truly essential if you want to walk and progress as someone who applies Stoicism to their life. And I'm going to leave you with that. Again, thank you for watching. Have a good day.